Before we begin today, I want to ask you to understand something clearly. This episode is not about gossip, it's not about conspiracy, and it's not about a headline. It's about a young girl whose life was taken from her long before the world ever knew Jeffrey Epstein's name, and about the woman she became when she finally reclaimed her voice. Stay with me. Hi, SAS listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. I'm your host, Dave Markel, coming to you from the Long Valley Studio in Washington, Utah. This is episode 168, and today we're joined by a woman whose courage and resilience have helped shape one of the most consequential legal reckonings of our time. Marina Lacerda grew up far from the halls of power. She came to New York as a young immigrant from Brazil, trying to help support her family and make a life for herself. But at just 14 years old, after enduring years of sexual assault and rape at the hands of her stepfather, she was lured into the orbit of Jeffrey Epstein, sold the lie of opportunity, and instead trapped in a system of abuse that exploited her vulnerability for years. What most of the world knew in cold court filings as Minor Victim 1 was a real human being, a young woman whose voice was silenced for decades, until now. Marina's journey, from teenager trapped in abuse to a critical witness whose testimony helped federal prosecutors build a case against Epstein, is heartbreaking and heroic in equal measure. She has spoken out publicly for the first time, not just to recount what happened to her, but to demand transparency, accountability, and justice for survivors everywhere. Today we hear her story, not as a statistic, not as a headline, but as a testament to the power of truth, bravery, and survival. It's an honor to host this week's guest. Here's Marina. Marina, welcome to Sexual Assault Survivor Stories. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's an honor for me. Marina, if you would, tell us about yourself. Give us some background information and particularly why you are here today.
I am originally from Brazil. I was born and raised in Brazil, Belo Horizonte. And I came to the States when I was 8 years old. My life in Brazil was really, really great, always around family, aunts, uncles, cousins, huge, huge family. My mother wanted to come to the United States for a better life. I was in the age of 7 years old. She came with my uncle when I was 7, and I stayed in Brazil for a year. The only thing I wanted was to be next to my mom. And I arrived to New York when I was 8 years old. My first stop was Astoria Park. If anybody's familiar with New York, they definitely know Astoria Park in Queens.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool place to go. I arrived on July 5th, and I'll always remember that date because my mom said, listen, today is not such an important date as the day before, which is July 4th. She's like, you'll never forget the day you arrived to America. And she was right. I will never forget. So July 5th marks my anniversary of living in America. I love America. I love New York. Moved into Steinway Street. My mom had already met her boyfriend at the time, and she was with him for a year. She introduced me to her boyfriend, who she was living with, which became my stepfather. Shortly after, I'd say 2, 3 months, my stepfather started to turn on porn. He would come home earlier. My mom would work, and he started coming home earlier to stay with me. And he would turn on porn, and he would lay me on his lap. I would have my head on his lap, and he would put a cover over my face, but kind of a cover where it was like almost see-through, and I would kind of peek in because I feel like as an 8-year-old, you kind of want to know when something is getting hidden from you. I feel like my 12-year-old, anytime I'm hiding stuff from her, she wants to know even more because that's what kids do.
Yeah, it's human nature.
Right? I feel like even as an adult, when you tell us like, don't look, it's the first instinct that we do is we look,
Right.
He put on porn every night and I would peek in and I would be so confused on what it was. Within time, he started to touch me inappropriately and he started to almost mimic what the porn was doing. became a very difficult time for me to understand what was happening because I did not understand, obviously, what porn was and what sex is and oral sex or sex was. He started to touch me very inappropriately and in my private area and rubbing and touching in places that definitely felt really good. I'm not going to lie, because as an 8-year-old, as a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, maybe 11, you start to kind of figure out what's going on. You don't know what's happening to you. Just know that it feels really, really good. He did it for a really long time, and I never said anything to my mom because I just didn't think anything of it. I thought it was like a game. So my mom had my sister. After a year and a half, they were together. I was about 10 years old when she had my sister. Yeah, because we're 8 years apart. Yeah, 10 years old. When my mom had my sister, we had to move into a bigger apartment. And where my mom's bedroom was, we had 2 other roommates, and my room was right next to her room. So one day, my stepfather was putting my sister to sleep, which is his daughter, and I was in the bed. And he came into the bed and he started to toss me around and joke around with me in the bed. He was tossing me around and touching me at the same time. My mother walked in and caught him doing that and was horrified. It was like, whoa, what the hell is going on here? So she tells him, come outside, and she sends me to my room, and they're screaming and they're having a whole discussion about what happened. She comes in the room and she's like, I know what happened. And I automatically, in my head, I was like, no, she does not know what happened. She's not even asking me what happened. She's just assuming this is what's happening over here. Meanwhile, there's so much more. And now I start to understand that this is completely wrong. So she explained to me, nobody should touch you. Nobody should be joking around with you in that way. And I looked at her and I said, well, I had no idea. I was very clueless. I never said anything to her. I think I was just more shocked that she was upset because I didn't know that I was doing anything wrong.
Right.
So then she said to me, please don't ever let that happen again. And if it does, you got to let me know. And I said, okay. So of course it happened again. And I said something to her and she went back and said something to him. They fought. And it just became a cycle where he would do it. I would tell her, they would fight, he would stop. And then it became to a point where I would tell her about him. Then he started to physically abuse me because I was telling her that he was doing this. So it got even worse. And it got to the point where I was so confused because my mom knew I was getting sexually abused in the house and physically abused, but yet she would still get up and leave and go do her laundry because in New York, nobody has a washer or dryer in their house. So she would leave, go to the supermarket, and would leave me behind. And I would just wonder why she was leaving me in the house with this man. There was a ledge by our front window facing the front of the apartment. It would face the street, and I would just stay there waiting for her to come home and praying that he just would not do it. Because at that point, I was realizing that it was very wrong for him to do it. And I started to look in it in a way as like it was super sinful that he was doing that, which I don't know how I projected that in my head.
The spiritual aspect of it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so weird. And I started to get really upset with my mom because I see that my mom was not doing anything about it. And it became a problem for her and I. And I started to argue with her really bad to the point where I was screaming at her. We would walk down the street and we would talk about it because she would take me outside because I was getting frustrated and I would scream at her. And I was 11, 10 and a half, 11 years old. And I would literally curse at her. Why the fuck are you leaving me alone? Why aren't you doing anything? Why aren't we leaving? Why am I staying here? Why are we staying in this situation? And her only response would be, we're immigrants. I'm not going to be able to work. I'm not going to be able to afford our lifestyle, which we didn't have a crazy lifestyle. We lived in Astoria. I didn't have sneakers. I didn't have cool clothes.
Yeah.
Very simple life. So the abuse went on until I was 12 years old with my stepfather. We had a roommate in that house that we lived in. We had many roommates, and everybody knew that I was getting abused by my stepfather. My downstairs neighbor knew it. My neighbors across the street knew. The whole Brazilian community knew that I was getting abused by my stepfather. And nobody ever did anything. And it sucked because all I wanted was some help from somebody. Nobody ever said anything. I used to go a lot to Burger King. I obviously never wanted to be home. And I used to always run to my best friend's house and I would stay there all the time. She lived around the corner from me. And I usually would go to after school programs or I would go to Burger King on Steinway Street. She came and looked for me on Burger King and found me there. She touched my shoulder. I was sitting with my friend. She touched my shoulder. I'll never forget that day. She says to me, "Can I talk to you?" I said, "Yeah, of course." So I move a couple table over and she turned around and she said, "Listen, I know what's happening to you because your stepfather tried to sexually abuse me and touch me in an appropriate way, and I want to go to the police." I've never been so happy in my life. I sprung up from my seat. I was like, let's go. So we went to the 114 precinct. They questioned me without my mother. They didn't believe me. They called me a liar. They said that I was jealous of my newborn sister. They kept asking me the same question, and I'm being questioned without my mom. And my first thought was, holy shit, my mom is going to be pissed. And I cannot tell the cops that my mom knows because they're going to take me away from my home. So I lied and I minimized the abuse that my stepfather was doing to me because I was also scared what was going to happen to him. And I don't know why I was scared. Again, I was so young. I was 12 years old and I was mostly scared of my mom, to be honest with you, because my mom had always put the fear of we're immigrants. We don't want to mess with the cops. I feel like immigrants have that mentality. They don't want the cops near. I mean, now I could understand, but back then also, I think it was a problem. And my mom came. She finally came to the precinct. She sat down and she said to me, "What did you tell them?" So I told her, "This is what I said. My stepfather touches me here, touches me there, and it's only been happening for 2 years, and you don't know about it." And she's like, "Okay." She's like, "You know that this is going to end bad." And I knew right there and then. I said, oh, I got even more worried. I said, man, what the hell did I just do? I should have never even came here. My stepfather ended up going to jail. We go back to our house, to our apartment, and of course, his stuff is all over thrown on the floor because they took him. And instead of her being more comforting, she was so cold with me. She was so mad at me. So she started to resent me and started to blame me to the fact that I had to start working because in her mind, she was an illegal alien as much as I was. We were both immigrants, but I was 12 years old. But she felt that she couldn't get a job because of her age and because she was an illegal immigrant and she spoke no English. I guess babysitting, cleaning houses were not, an option at the time because I feel like those two, you kind of don't need to really speak English. And in New York, if you speak Portuguese, then Spanish is just right around the corner. You could kind of navigate for that. But she always said to me, I don't want to clean houses. I don't want to babysit. In my head, I'm like, I have a kid now. Whatever I need to do to take care of her, I'm going to do it. Whatever it is needed to do. Yeah. Okay. If I have to resort to the worst thing possible, if it means to keeping her happy and because I can't get a regular job, I most likely will do it because I'm here to protect my daughter. That's what I put her in the world for. I have to care for her. I have to shelter her. I have to feed her. That's the least that you can do as a mom. So I started to work at the age of 12 years old. Now, meanwhile, I already had a little summer job at 12 years old. I worked in a real estate office called Capital Realty in Astoria. I worked there during the summer and I would work there after school some days. I reached out to my boss at the time and I said to her, listen, I need to work more days. I need to work every day after school. She says to me, don't you have your ballet and your jazz and your tap classes? Because I used to take them. And I said, yeah. I said, I can't do that anymore. My mother also made it clear to me saying that our lifestyle was going to change. She would no longer be able to afford to pay for ballet, jazz, and tap. Obviously, I knew that if she was telling me she didn't want to work. So I let that go and I started to work at the real estate full time. And I said, man, this is not cutting it. Like I'm only able to work after school. I'm working on weekends. I had no childhood whatsoever. Right. So I was like, I need to get something else to make money. So I started then to work in a catering hall in Bedford Avenue. It was a Jewish hall, so it had a lot of parties on weekends. It didn't have parties really during the week. I worked there for a little bit. They used to pay me $7.50 an hour. Okay. And let me tell you, I busted my butt in that place. We were doing stuff that I was, what? I did so much work. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. Cause I was getting out of there almost 1 o'clock in the morning, heading back to Astoria, going to school the next day on a Sunday and still working the real estate. And I was like, this is just too much. And then it brings back to everybody knowing that what I was going through. My stepfather went to jail. I was very vulnerable. I wanted to make money. So a neighborhood girl A Brazilian girl comes up to me. We were planning to go to a party. So I went to her house. We got dressed. And at that point, I already had started drinking as well. Obviously. I mean, I think any 12-year-old or 13-year-old would have been drinking. So we're drinking in her apartment, in her basement apartment, and she says, "Hey, Marina, I know that you're going through a really tough time. I have this man, this very rich, powerful man. He loves to, he wants to get massages by young women." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Wow." I said, "Why?" Because I really don't know how to give massages. "Don't worry about it. He's gonna love you. He just wants a nice young girl there." I said, "Okay." She goes, "However, you do have to take off your shirt." In my head, I thought, I've gotten worse treatment from my stepfather, touched everywhere in all kinds of places with no clothes on. This doesn't seem like such a bad idea. And she's like, "You'll make $300. You'll be there for half an hour, 20 minutes." I'm like, "Okay, well, that doesn't sound bad at all." She goes, "Yeah." She's like, "Yeah, he's a gentleman. He's a very rich, powerful man. He lives in Manhattan. I know he's gonna like you." Okay. She sets up the appointment. We take a cab, and here we are in front of Jeffrey Epstein's house. And I look at this mansion in Manhattan. Now, being 14 years old at the time, I was like, wow, right? I live in Astoria. I live on 25th Avenue. I mean, I'm living in a very simple town neighborhood. I looked at the doors of his mansion and I said, "What the hell? Where am I? And who is this guy?" There's no Google when I was 14. She rings the doorbell. A woman comes to the front, opens up the door, tells us to come in. We come in, we go straight into his office and his waiting area is where I would like to describe it. Coming in, on his left side was the office where he would have people waiting, and then the right side would be all his cameras where he would have a man, I guess, just keep an eye on things. And of course, I found that out later on, not when I first came in. So we sat down, so nervous. I'm like, this is so insane. And I couldn't even speak. I was whispering the whole time. Don't ask me why. I was whispering. And she even asked me, she goes, "Why are you whispering?" I'm like, "Because the place is so beautiful. I've never been in a place like this. It's so rich that I don't even know how to act." When I came in, I saw pictures of Trump, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, a whole bunch of other people that I didn't know who it was at the time. And I don't know who it is now because I can't remember it, but it was a lot of important people. So we waited for a little bit. The woman came back, grabbed us, and said, "He's ready for you guys. Come this way." She brought us to the elevator. She came in the elevator with us. Awkward silence because I'm thinking, does this woman know what's going to go on upstairs? She's in her 40s. She's got to know. We're so young. And I'm like, well, I guess this is what rich people do. They just make believe they don't know anything. We get upstairs. As soon as the elevator door opens, it goes right into, it doesn't go right into his massage room. It was like a door opening, basically going into his massage room. And it was a hallway. And he had a couple of paintings on the wall with naked women. And these naked women looked very young and their bodies were very young, very small on top, on the bottom, also very small, almost like a young girl's who hasn't shaved. All his paintings, none of the women shaved, nor in their private area and nor in their armpits. It was very weird. We go into the massage room. There's a massage table in the middle of the room. He has a whole vanity full of creams, lotions, oils, very dark, blacked out curtains. And you can even see there was windows. I didn't even know there was windows until obviously later on. I was going there many times. On the ceiling, he had clouds. So it was a really nice touch. It was kind of like to comfort the person. We waited for him and he came in a robe and he put out his hand and he goes, "Hi, I'm Jeffrey." I said, "Hi, I'm Marina." He goes, "I've heard great things about you." I said, "Oh, you did? Thank you so much for having me here." He laid down with his chest down and he said, "Where are you from?" And I said to him, "I'm from Brazil." And he asked a little bit about me and where I lived and what my situation was. And right there and then, I already had told him. I became very vulnerable. I'm like, I live with my mom, my sister. I take care of them. I go to school. I work 2 jobs. just explaining to him how much I appreciated the fact that he was giving me $300 to give him a massage.
Yeah.
And he got on the phone because he usually gets on the phone. Anytime he gets a massage, he's always on the phone. He got on the phone and he was talking to somebody and we were massaging his feet. He turned around and at that point, obviously, he didn't have the robe on anymore. He already took off the robe. He had like a little towel over his butt. He turned around. He had the towel over his private area and he looked at me and he said, "Can you take off your top?" Because I still had my top on. So I took off my top because she already had told me I was going to take off my top. I took off my top and he goes, "Wow." He goes, "You have such a beautiful body." And he went to go touch me and I was a little, just put his hand, no, no, no. And he was like, "Oh," he's like, "You're shy." I said, "Yeah." I said, "I don't really feel comfortable." He turned around and he looked at the girl and he said, "Are you guys going to take off your bra?" And I looked at her because that was not part of what she told me. And she goes, "Of course, Jeffrey, of course we are." And she takes off her bra and then she looks at me. She's like, "Do you need help?" And I looked at her like, this is not what we talked about. But you know, when you're put in a situation where you're in a room, you've already been sexually abused by your stepfather, who you know and who you know what he's capable of, and you've gotten physical abuse afterwards when you were saying no, you get scared to say no at that moment when you are in a place where there's nowhere to run and you don't know what this person is going to do with you. I know that he's rich, he's powerful. I don't know anything about this man. So the girl helped me take off my bra, and I was very uncomfortable. And at that point, he refrained himself from touching me. He went and he said to me, "Do you mind if I touch myself?" And I said, "Yeah, I do mind." He looked at the other girl and he goes, "Come on, it's just a little fun. I'm not causing any harm." He didn't even care and he spat on his hand and he just started touching himself. And it was so aggressive the way he was doing it. And then the young girl that was with me started to touch him to help him climax. It was very confusing. It was so traumatic that I feel like up until today, I kind of blacked out a whole bunch of stuff. We left there, you know, it was over. He handed over the money and he said that he would be in touch with her soon to see me again. And in my head, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I'm very scared. I don't know if I can see this man again.
Yeah.
So when we left there, I looked at her right after. I'm like, "Girl, what the fuck is going on here? What's happening? Like, why didn't you tell me all this was going to happen?" And she was like, "Stop it. It's over. You already made $300. She's like, "How much do you work to make this kind of money? You know, you're working your ass off to make $300. So we go downstairs and I'm still explaining to her, like, "Hey, you could have been honest with me. I probably would have still been okay with it if there was some honesty to it." She's like, "You would have not done it. I know you. You would have not done it. And now that you did it, it's over. You'll probably be more comfortable." And she called me up about a week later. "Hey, listen, he absolutely loves you." And I said, "I get it, but I don't know why he wants to continue doing these massages because I'm going to be honest with you. I just don't think it's going to lead any further than what I'm comfortable with." She goes, "Listen, get to know him, get to know who he is. He can help you out in many ways." I said, "Well, I need to think about it." I sat there and I thought about it for a little bit and I said, "Wow, I'm an immigrant. Maybe he can help me with my papers. Maybe he can give me a job. So, well, maybe it's worth a try." So I went back, I saw him with her, and I continued and I went there by myself and it progressed. It went from just taking your top off, from taking your bra off, to taking your pants off, to taking your panties off, to getting touched, me touching him, pinching his nipples and touching his private area. And I went from there to having sex and getting raped. And I had no idea that I and this man had this contact so deep because my trauma is so deep that I was talking to another survivor who actually went there with me. And I said to her, "Girl, you know, it's crazy. I'm around all these other survivors now. I'm talking to them and they're telling me they had sex with Epstein." I said, "It's insane how these girls are telling me they had sex with Epstein." And she got quiet on the other side of the phone and she said, "Marina, what do you mean it's crazy?" I said, "Yeah, it's really weird. They're saying that they had sex with Epstein. I don't believe Epstein would do that." She turns around and she goes, "Oh," she goes, "Oh, you have deep trauma." She goes, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, Marina, you had sex with him multiple times. He used to grab you in front of us and put you on top of him and tell us, this is how you do it. This is how it's done. He used you as a prop to teach us how to have sex with him. And I said, what? When I did my depositions in 2019, I never wrote that I had sex with this man because in my head, I didn't think I did. So it was a whole new world for me. I then realized that day, I was, oh my God, how could have this happened? And I forgot how. So I went back to my therapist and I was hysterical crying. I said, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I allowed him to have sex with me. And my therapist was, whoa, 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 time out, time out. You didn't allow anything. You got raped by this man. I said, no, no, no. I said, the girls are telling me that they've seen, he put me on top and I let him. She goes, Marina, stop it right now. She goes, you need to understand something. You were a child. No man of that age should have even been thinking about a massage with you to begin with. And then for him to put you on, she goes, no, it's not that you allowed him. He groomed you into it. And it took a long time, and it's still taking a very long time for me to understand today that Jeffrey Epstein groomed me into doing things and made me believe that he was going to help me, that he was going to be there for me. He furnished my whole apartment. He would pay for my rent if I needed. If I needed money for something, for an electric bill, he would give it to me. So he knew that I needed him for money purpose. Because at one point, I got my own apartment. My stepfather moved back in the house. My mom allowed him to move back in the house. So then I moved in with a boyfriend at the time. The boyfriend and I did not work out. Obviously, we're 17 years old. He's living his life. He's 18. He's doing things that he's not even supposed to for me. He got so upset when he found out my stepfather was moving back home and I had to move out. And he came from such a great family. Oh my God, beautiful family. I'm so happy for him today. He's super successful. He's actually about to have a kid. He lives in the UK and he is super successful. He's the CEO of the company that I don't want to say the name because he was like, please don't ever put me out there like that. He started to sell drugs and he didn't have to. His family was so good to him. He had such a good home. He's like, I'm moving out. I'm going to start selling weed for you. And I said, please don't do that. I said, I do this and I have a job. I started to work at a nightclub at that point, in a Greek nightclub. I was 16 and a half. I don't know how they hired me. Right before that, I got into high school 14 right when I met Jeffrey. But I started to work so much that I was so tired and I just didn't want to go to school anymore because all I wanted to do was sleep. And my mom was getting furious with me. She was, you're not doing good. You just keep sleeping. And I'm like, I'm so tired. I'm working at night. And but you need to go to school. You're being lazy. You're being a bum. And I used to give her all my money. I used to keep like $300 for myself because I used to get a bacon, egg, and cheese. And I used to smoke cigarettes. And I used to get a pack of cigarettes. And I thought it was the thing. And I used to have $100 in my pocket. She finally just said to me, listen, if you don't want to go to school, if you feel like it's not your thing, I'll just take you out. And I was seeing Jeffrey. I was making money. I was working in this nightclub, making $800 a week, working there 3 times a week. And then I'm seeing Jeffrey 3 times a week. I'm making another $1,000, almost $1,800, $2,000 a week. I mean, back then that was a lot of money, a lot of money.
Wealthy.
Yeah. And Jeffrey also had a thing where he would say, it's not what school you go to, it's who you know. And that always engraved in my head. I'm like, he's right. Like, what do I need school? It's who I know. And I know the person. I have this connect over here. This man is going to help me. So I dropped out of high school. A year after my stepfather came back to live in the house, my mom allowed him to come back in the house. And that's when my boyfriend was like, we need to get an apartment. I'm going to do all these wrong things and start selling drugs. And I allowed him, which was the worst thing ever because he ended up getting deported. And it was probably the best thing for him because he's really successful today. And until today, I thank him every day. I'm so happy for him. I'm so proud of him. But it really sucked to know that my mom chose my stepfather all those years.
Yeah.
Until today, she's still, I think there's a lot of resentment between her and I.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jeffrey Epstein, he took advantage of me and he knew that I was an immigrant. and I needed the money. I thought there was going to be, and when I met Leslie Groff, I was like, wow, I want to be her. I want to be her. I want to be her. I want to work in his office. I want to be able to run transaction. I want to be able to pay the girls whenever they come, because I would come and ask her for money and she'd have money for me, cash, not knowing that she was also getting abused. And one of the other girls also, they don't want us to bring up her name. She was also getting abused. And it sucks. It sucks because I had no idea at the time. And I'm over here praying to take their job. Obviously, a lot more happened after that. 2008, the FBI came looking for me when I was living in an apartment in Astoria. I was living by myself at that time. I was still in contact with Jeffrey Epstein in 2008, but not so much because I was already 17 years old and I was on the verge of being an old lady for him.
Right.
I know, 17 years old, right? Today, nowadays, I'm like 17 years old, you're a baby, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But for Jeffrey Epstein, 17 years old was old.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned around to me one time and he said, listen, you're not fun anymore. You're wearing a lot of makeup and you're different. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, you're getting a little old and you're just not fun. And you bring me girls that are like your age. He was so upset at one point because I would bring him girls that were actually over the age of 18 that he wanted us to bring IDs with the girls to make sure they were young.
Wow.
Okay. Yep. And he's right. I wasn't able to find him any 14, 13, 15-year-old girls because I'm not hanging out with 13, 14, 15-year-old girls. So we really started to part our ways, but I think that he would still latch onto me because I knew so much about him, and all the girls that had gone to him with myself also was very involved in my life because they came from a broken home. And at that time, I had the apartment. So some of them and a lot of them lived with me. At one point, they lived with me. All these girls from Queens that have been there, or one of the girls that knows him took them there. They just lived with me at one point. At one point, one of these girls in Queens lived with me because my house was open to that. And I always wanted to help the girls out because these girls didn't only come from a little broken home. They came from really messed up backgrounds. Their parents were drug addicts. Their parents were abusing them physically, mentally, emotionally. It's a lot of abuse that happens in New York in general, I feel like. Just living in New York, I think it's so abusive as it is because of all the craziness and the rushing, the cursing. It's just so much that goes on. And I think it's such a heavy energy in New York. And I think that people, they're used to it. So they don't know what's really happening.
Yeah.
You move into another place and you go, wow, I cursed a lot. Wow, I was mean all the time. Wow, I didn't take the time to enjoy my home. Life in New York is really for a young person. And I feel like after 25, 28, you start to go, I need to slow. Because I feel like people also think like, no, that 25, 28, it's young. It is young, but your mental health gets pretty messed up in New York. I have to say that. And people take advantage of you because in New York, it's like, who do you know? Who can you contact? Who can you connect me with? Who do you know? You don't know anybody? You don't mean anything to me. And they will discard you like it's nothing. It was pretty wild living in New York at that time. I feel like I've worked everywhere in New York and I've done everything that I could. And when it came to Epstein at around 17, 18, the FBI came, like I was saying, it was so aggressive the way the FBI came. I mean,
Help me understand what that was like. First of all, how did they know to come to you? And then what was their goal in contacting you?
up until today, I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. That is one of the reasons why we are fighting so hard to get these Epstein files out.
Right.
In 2008, I was completely clueless why the FBI came to me. I was under the impression that I was the only girl that knew other girls that were going to Epstein.
Right. You were how old?
2008, I was 18, 19.
Mm-hmm. Were you aware in your head at that point, finally, who Epstein was and what connections he had and who all these other people were, the pictures on his wall and things like that? Did the impact sink in?
No, Not at all, because I wasn't so much in contact with him because he had already told me that I was old for him.
Yeah.
So he would just keep me in the loop. I think just because I knew too much and he was scared that I was going to say something, even though he would scare me, he'd be like, I own the government, I own the bank, I own everybody.
Wow.
He used to tell me he owned everybody. And it got to the point where I started to drink a lot and I started to do drugs. He turned around to me one day and he said, are you doing drugs? And I said, no, no, no. And of course, like I was there and I was so high because at that point, I think I needed to numb myself to do anything with Epstein. And I think also that's what happened, why I forgot about a lot about of the things that I did, because I was always high going to see him after a certain point
Hmm.
because I was doing things that I did not want to do.
Yeah.
He turned around and he said, I'm going to take a sample of your hair and I'm going to send it in. And if you're doing drugs, you're cut. I'm going to give you 2 weeks to clean up your act. And I did. I cleaned up my act real quick. He was never the type of guy. He did not want you to be absent or not understand or not feeling what was happening in that room. He wanted to be in control. He wanted you to be there mentally and physically.
Right.
So I think he also, some of the girls he kept in the loop of watching us. He also had delivered furniture to my apartment. So a lot of women lived there. I think he manipulated me with that. And I think he was watching me. I think he was watching all of us. Because then later on, I found out some things about him that I was like, whoa. So they came in 2008, the FBI. They knocked on the door. There was a survivor upstairs with me. I opened up the door and it was a woman and a man. And the woman says, hi, are you Marina Lacerda? And I was like, yeah. She's like, I'm here to ask you a couple questions about Jeffrey Epstein. I stood there in shock. And she's like, do you know who Jeffrey Epstein is? And I said, yes, I do. She goes, well, we need to come in to talk to you about it. And I said, no, you cannot come into my house. I don't want to talk about Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know much about him. Please leave me alone. And I went to go close the door and she put her foot on the door and stopped it. And she goes, you're going to need my card because you're going to have to reach out to me. And she dropped the card and I closed the door and I picked up the card and I look up the stairs and it's the other girl, the survivor, and her mouth is dropped open. And I'm like, holy crap. What is going on? No clue. Just completely clueless that there was a case in Florida. I get on my landline. I call Leslie. I said, Leslie, Jeffrey has to call me right away. The FBI came knocking on my door. What the hell is going on? Still not understanding. Jeffrey calls me back within seconds. He's like, Marina, what's going on? I'm like, Jeffrey, I have the FBI at my door asking me questions about you. I got to be completely honest with you. I'm going to have to tell them everything that I know about you. He goes, no, you're not. He goes, I'm going to get you a lawyer and you will not ever call this number ever again. Do you understand me? I said, okay, click, not even a bye. Jeffrey Epstein never said bye on the phone, by the way. That's one thing about him. Very rude. Hung up on me. So the lawyer that he recommended me called me up. He said, hey, we'd like for you to come down and talk to us. So I go down to his office and I speak to him and he's like, listen, you have gotten subpoenaed by the court. For what? I'm so confused, right? He's like, Jeffrey has been involved with a couple of cases of prostitution. I said, oh, wow, really? He goes, yeah. And he goes, and some of the girls were a little underage. And I think you fall in that category. He goes, we need you to tell us what happened between you and Jeffrey. So now I'm like, this guy is not protecting me. He's protecting Jeffrey. So I literally turned to him and I said, am I telling you everything I know? He goes, I need you to tell me everything you know. I did up to a certain extent. And I was scared. I was very scared. I was already in the age of 18 years old. I was scared that I was going to get prosecuted as a prostitute or whatever it is. Didn't have my papers, was still an illegal immigrant. I was like, what the hell is going on? Oh my God, this is terrible. I am going to go back to Brazil and I'm going to go to jail. I went back for another deposition that they took from me. And I think a week later, they called me up. They're like, hey, we have great news. You don't have to go to court. You don't have to worry about anything. Come in. We need you to sign something. You're done. I was like, thank God. I'm so happy for this. I don't have to face this man. I don't have to tell anybody a story. I don't have to probably go back to Brazil. And that was it. Never heard from Jeffrey Epstein. Done. My life went on. I worked, had a child, got married. Then 2019 comes.
Yeah. Marina, I just want to tell you how terribly, terribly sorry I am for everything that you had to endure. It is horrific and sad. But I have to tell you also, besides the fact that I'm really sorry for everything that you've been through, I'm also tremendously thrilled about your strength and your power, your fortitude to be able to sit here after just one question of tell me about your background. And you've been able to express far more, I think, than I've ever heard anybody talk about in terms of Jeffrey Epstein. But not only that, your experiences with your stepdad and how horrific that must have been at such a young age to be exposed at 8 years old to pornography and then everything that he did after that for years. Wow. What an amazing presence and strength you have. And so articulate and so powerful in being able to talk about all of this. I can't thank you enough.
I feel like it's important for me to share my story because when women get raped, when women get sexually abused, when they get physically abused, when they get emotionally abused, it starts in such a young age. It's so important that listeners and your audience and hopefully parents can relate to the story and understand that it really does mess you up in the future. And it is very important for parents to be aware when your kid is going through something and to communicate with them because we have forgotten to communicate with our children because we're so stuck on the phone and we're always stuck on the social media. We're always stuck on work. We're always stuck with something. The internet has brought us to a new place where we've disconnected with each other as humans. And it's sad. It's sad how we've desensitized sex and what sexuality is. And I think we need to go back a little bit and ground ourselves to what's going on. And you asked me earlier, why do I want to share my story? I think like everybody is wondering, like, why did it take so long for me to break my silence? Like, why am I now going on different platforms and sharing my story? People need to understand that the trauma that I have, that all of us as survivors that we have today, it doesn't only come with sexual abuse, it comes with emotional abuse, physical abuse, drug abuse, alcohol abuse. These are all things that are combined together. Almost everybody that I've spoken with, even survivors that are not Epstein survivors, had a drug addiction. I almost died because I was addicted to that. And because I got it prescribed to me at the age of 16. And in 2019, when I got subpoenaed again by the FBI, well, close to 2019, it was 2018, I highly became addicted to Xanax. And the crazy thing is, I wasn't even taking it from my doctor only, I was taking it from the street. And at that time, fentanyl came around, and I became highly addicted to it. And I almost died. I wanted to numb myself so much because I couldn't believe that I had gotten subpoena again for this man. I didn't know all that whole 10 years that went by, right, from 2008 to 2018, what this man was doing to other women. And I only understood that when I went to the sub-house committee and I broke my silence in the Capitol, that so many other women were abused after 2008 when he was on his work release. And I didn't talk. I didn't speak. I didn't speak up. I numbed myself with Xanax, taking almost 15 to 20 pills a day and drinking very hard. It really messed me up. I had a seizure in front of my daughter and my ex-husband. I was brought to the hospital and everybody was very confused why I had a seizure. I have no neurological problem. I said, well, God just tapped me in the head really bad and said, hey, you're gonna die. You're gonna die. And I was honest and I told everybody, I said, I'm very addicted to Xanax. And yeah, I need to stop it. Everybody was in shock. Nobody had any clue. And I have to say, thank God I almost died Thank God. Till today, I bless the Lord for doing that to me. As horrible as it sounds, because I am going to be 6 years clean in February.
Congratulations.
And if it wasn't for that seizure in front of my daughter and my ex-husband, I probably would have still been taking Xanax today. So I'm very thankful. And I think it's very important for people to understand this. Anybody who's gotten sexually abused has other things going on in their life.
I think that's a really important aspect of all of this. It's not just that it's Jeffrey Epstein. There was her stepfather and probably other abuses. I'm not going to make assumptions here, but you haven't talked about anything else, but
There are other abuses, many other abuses.
Yeah, I know that in those circles, people find out who you are, what you do, how you act, and they take advantage of that and they really prey on your vulnerabilities. But what's amazing to me is that you're so open about all of this. Like you said, it's important for people to know it's not the fame or the notoriety or the spotlight of being an Epstein survivor. A lot of it is the fact that you're just so open about sexual abuse, rape in general, and what it does to mindset and how it impacts. And that's what I'm so impressed with, Marina, is that the impact that this has had in your life is something that you're willing to talk about behind the scenes, talking about the impact of everything that happened outside of social media. You're here in a podcast willing to talk about as much detail probably as you've told anyone. I don't know that I've ever heard your story in such detail, and I think it's admirable. Your point is well taken, that the importance of this is that rape and sex assault ruins lives. And that as a rape culture, we need to stop re-victimizing, re-traumatizing victims and survivors by not believing them, by minimizing their stories, or by, in your case, maybe even people taking advantage of the fact that you are an Epstein survivor, and that's all they want to hear about. And that's all that they think you are, is this public figure who's now gaining notoriety, fame, attention because you're an Epstein survivor. I think there's so much more depth. Obviously, the way you've talked today, there's so much more depth to your story, your life. And I love the fact that you're willing to talk about that.
I have to talk about it because you pinpointed exactly what I wanted to say. A lot of these platforms that I've done before, they cut down my story and they just go right to Epstein. There's more to Epstein. And let me tell you, these other victims that are Epstein survivors, there's more to them too.
Right.
And it just sucks that our story is just cut. But some of these victims don't like to talk about it. I feel like I need to talk about it. We need to realize that sometimes the sexual abuse starts right on your nose. It's in the family. Most of the time, it's an uncle, it's a stepfather. Unfortunately, to say sometimes even a father. I've had stories where women are reaching out to me. Father have been like not only sexually abusing and raping their daughter, but getting their daughter high and giving them alcohol. It's a whole nother world out there. We have to open up our eyes to our children. Our children are the most precious thing ever, and their age is going to affect them later on in life. And that's not something that you want to put up with. Because myself, I'm trying to heal and go to therapy and trying to understand what happened with my mother and I, because I think that's where it first went wrong.
Yeah, those dynamics are critically important to recognize when you talk about how it short-circuited your relationships, and especially with your mom. Look at those years that were totally destroyed by the fact that she knew what was going on. She put the burden on your shoulders of you need to stay away from him, because she'd turn around, like you said, and walk out the door and go do her chores and go do her thing. And you're left alone with this guy, and she's, it's probably going to happen again, but oh well.
And the crazy part is, Dave, is that my stepfather got deported. After all those years that I lived by myself, she comes running to me in my job and she tells me that he got deported because he got probation for 5 years. And on the last day of his probation, they went and they deported him back to Brazil. When he got deported, she came running to me to tell me. And I looked at her and I said, "And why should I care?" She goes, "This is the father of your sister." I said, "I don't give a shit. This man has ruined my life and I've moved on." She goes, "What am I going to do? How am I going to survive?" I said, "Don't worry. I'm going to help you out." I had to take care of my apartment, take care of my mom's apartment, her car, my sister, and still She managed to tell my sister, who was 9 years old at the time. My sister wanted to go to Brazil and see her father. She did not know this was happening. She did not know that he was sexually abusing me and had sexually abused all my friends. I didn't even have friends at the time because when they used to come over, he was sexually abusing them. I had no friends. That's why everybody knew. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, nobody did anything. So my sister says, I want to go see my father. I want to go see my father. My mom's like, no. You know what? You want to go see your father? I'm going to let you go see your father. I said to my mom, I said, are you crazy? I said, this man sexually abused me. She goes, he's not going to do it. It's her daughter. I said, he will do it. She's 8, 9 years old. He's a pedophile. He doesn't care who she is. He cares that she's young. And exactly what I said is what happened. My sister went to Brazil. I would speak to her on the phone and I would ask her, is there anything weird? And I could hear it in the tone of her voice that he was sexually abusing her. So she turns around to my mom and says, I want you to move down here. I want you to come live with me and dad. My mom turns around and says, I don't think I can do that. I don't have my papers. If I move down to Brazil, I cannot come back to the States. Going back and forth, she turns around to me. She says, Marina, I'm going to have to go to Brazil. Your sister wants me to live there, and I want to rekindle things again with your stepfather. I said, sounds insane, but you know what? I want you to go check on my sister. She went down there. She checked on my sister. Now I start talking to my sister a little bit more comfortably because now my mom is there and I kind of know when my stepfather's not around. My sister says, I want to come see you in America, in New York. I said, come down and see me. She comes to New York. She was about 10 and a half, 11 years old. And she starts to telling me exactly what happened to her happened to me. And I said to her, you're not going back. You're going to live with me. She lived with me from the age of 11 until 17. It was very hard to take care of my sister. My sister became epileptic at the time. I was like, whoa, I didn't even know what epilepsy was. She just out of nowhere had a seizure. Different doctors and trying everything, different medications. It really fucked my sister up. And I think it was just my stepfather, and it was just a lot going on. She then started to drink. She started to do drugs. She was a part of the ROTC in school. And as soon as she found out she couldn't become a cop and, her life was pretty much like limited to doing things, she just picked up and started doing horrible things. And since I didn't graduate high school, I made her graduate high school. I was like, if it's the last thing I do, you will graduate high school. You will continue. I used to go to her high school pregnant. She used to be cutting school and I drag her back in school. It was terrible, but I absolutely love my sister, but she's had, I think, so much seizures and just so many different medications and so much drugs and so much alcohol that she's just so off today. And my mom gives so much love to her and then has totally said to me, you're strong, you're good. Because I feel like people do feel like that about me because I do share my story very comfortably. So she feels like that I am healed and that I am good and that I don't need the motherly love. And it's like completely the opposite. No. I need it. I never got it from you. And now you're reassuring me that you don't even love me because we think that mothers are supposed to love us. That's not how it works, unfortunately.
Marina, I could talk to you for hours about the impact of what this has done to your life above and beyond what you've already told. There's so much. And I know how there must be quiet times when you're alone, when you're about to go to sleep or when you're driving or whatever, and these intrusive memories impact your life. Are you able to tell us about your healing process? What are you doing on your healing path to deal with all of this?
So this is the biggest issue that I'm having with my therapist. After having so many therapists, and I opened up to my last therapist for the first time ever. I've never opened up to any therapist. He shamed me so bad. He called me a working girl. He messed me up. So then I went from trusting somebody to going back, not trusting anybody. And who I have now as my therapist is Randy. She deals with some of the survivors and she's a trauma therapist. And I'm having a hard time going in details with her because unfortunately, I feel like I'm in a point in my life where I can tell my story and not get emotional about it because I don't want to go back and think about details. So I skip out the little details because when we go into these platforms, we're not going into little tiny details because then it would just be a 20-hour thing, going from the abuse of my stepfather to many other abusers and then Epstein and then many other abuses. It would just go into so many details and I'd probably be sobbing because at this point now we're getting into details. I'm having a hard time going into details with my therapist, and I've been seeing her for 4 months now. And she gets on my case. She's, I cannot ask you to give me details. You have to want to open up to me. How am I supposed to open up when Trump is shutting down the government, not releasing the Epstein files to the victims who have, not only I, have had major trauma and have forgotten things they've done? There's so many things that has been brought to me that I have not remembered that I've done, and it's terrible because now I cannot connect myself with my story because now I forgot this. I need to have my file so that I can connect to my story and know what I did. I can connect with my stepfather's story because I wrote on my diary. That was my healing process when I was young. I used to write everything down and I still have it till today. And sometimes I look back on it and I'm like, I can't believe I went through that. I can't believe I had this moment. I can't believe I felt this way. I can't believe I did that. I can't do that with Epstein. I cannot go back and see all those things. The government has that power. That's why we are making such a big deal because it is part of our healing process. It's hard for me to get in details with my therapist when I don't know these details. I'll give you a perfect example. Ghislaine, I've been with Ghislaine, and I only put that together after I seen her on the news.
Mm.
I brought a survivor with me who Jeffrey Epstein was madly in love with. And after many times of going there, she would not want to go alone. She only brought myself with her. And we went into his bedroom and we did something with Ghislaine. And I know we had sex and I know that we fooled around. I can't remember it, but I can remember that I was with this woman. That is horrible. And I would love to sit and ask the survivor, but the survivor wants nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
She doesn't even want to say his name. So I can't even call her up and be like, hey, can we talk about the day that we were with this woman? Because she's not even going to know who Ghislaine is. She's so traumatized about this whole Epstein thing that she wants absolutely nothing to do with it.
Right.
She doesn't even want to say his name. So this is why my healing process is good. And I feel like anytime I am in these platforms, I have a therapeutic session with the person. And it's so awesome because I know many people are going to listen to this, but I feel like I'm opening up myself to a stranger who's not going to judge me.
Right.
Right.
What I think is so critical is that I don't know that people are asking you. I don't know that you're even willing or able to talk about how things made you feel. You've got years and years of Epstein experience and your stepfather's experience. Has anyone ever asked you, how did that make you feel?
Never. This is the first time ever. And I know exactly how I feel about the whole situation. And it has impacted my personal life with my ex-husband, who also was an abuser. And this is what happens to us. We go from getting abused to going and getting abused again and thinking that it's okay, that it's normal, that it's just going to go away. It's normal. So definitely it has impacted me to go into another controlling, abusive relationship. But thank God that I was able to break my silence, talk to my therapist about what was going on in my house with my soon to be ex-husband. And I was able to take a step back and say, what the hell is going on? I've made excuses for everything. I'm going to change this person. I'm going couples retreat. I'm going couples therapy. I'm doing separate therapy. The person becomes so manipulative that they make you the problem. They start saying that you're bipolar. They start saying that your past has now brought a problem to the relationship. And the only problem that I would say that I think all abusers have in a relationship, even in a good relationship, in a good marriage, is sex. Sex is a big part where it plays with us. Because if you do something wrong while you're having sex, it just brings you back to the abuse. And in the beginning of our relationship, it was all great. It was nothing like this. And I've had partners in the past where one little thing, it brings either me back to my stepfather or it brings me back to Jeffrey Epstein. So that makes me feel like I'm doing something sinful, how I felt when I was 8, 9 years old. And when I would go to Jeffrey, I'm like, this is sinful. And this is something very personal. I know everyone has a feeling to masturbate. Masturbating for me is completely sinful. It's like, what? No, no one should be doing that. That is not an appropriate thing to do. And I think as 2025, everyone does that. I think people are doing more than that. I think that is like the least of what people are doing. No, I think people are even having like phone sex and all that. And I'm just saying to you, like, how it has impacted me as an adult today. I'm pretty sure a single woman has plenty of toys and does whatever they want. I'm like, no, that is not okay. That is not supposed to happen. And I think that's why today, when I look at women sometimes and I look at them outside when I do go out, because I have to say also why I'm doing this, because there is life after abuse. Sometimes women, and I see the survivors, they don't want to have any more boyfriends. They don't trust men. They don't want to have a babysitter. They don't want to go out. They don't even want to dress a little bit sexy. It becomes a whole different world. They don't even want to put on makeup because it might bring men to say something to them, and they might be in a position where they don't know how to say no, because we sometimes don't know how to say no as women today. And that's something that I'm learning to do, setting boundaries. You need to set boundaries. You need to know, hey, listen, I know I like this. I know I don't like this, and I have to say no. No, thank you. My time here is, it's just, we're not going to share it. Something that I've learned today, to set boundaries. That's the main reason also why I'm doing this. We need to also pay attention to women, how we dress today, how we speak today. This is something very important. We are sending out a message to the next generation to just become a little bit worse than what is going on. Women feel like that they need to dress very vulgar and speak very vulgar and openly speak about sex with other men. That's not how it works. I went out last weekend for my friend's birthday, and I was very much in shock. I spoke to a couple of guys, and right away, I think 3 different men that spoke to me wanted to kiss me. And I turned to one guy, I said, is this normal? Is this what people do? You just met me here tonight in a bar and you want to kiss me, and you don't know me. You don't know where my mouth has been. You don't know who I am. You have no idea what kind of conversation I could carry, but yet you just care about a kiss. And possibly after, he thought, or might have thought, that we could go to bed together. He quickly realized that once I said no to the kiss, that definitely was not going to happen with sex. And I just think that the women have set their standards low.
And don't you also agree that that has a lot to do with social media and the music industry also?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
And we could go on and on about this. And what it is this unbelievable pressure to open up yourself, to erase those boundaries, and to make yourself as vulnerable as you possibly can. Open up to free sex, open up to exposing yourself, talking any way you want. I mean, listen to some of the lyrics of the songs today, right?
Horrible. Horrible. My daughter is 12 years old, is listening to music that I have to tell her, Victoria, this is not okay. I know that we've had some music growing up in the early 2000s, early 90s that weren't very great, but the music now is crazy.
So
It is
explicit.
insane. It is insane. You know, I saw an interview with Cardi B, and I know she's not the most perfect example, but I feel like all the artists out there are kind of in her level at this point. And she was talking about how women give oral sex. I'm going to try to phrase this in the most cleanest way possible, because the way she phrased it was not like that. She called women meat eaters. And I was immediately upset about that, because you're a woman yourself. You're a public figure, and women look up, children look up to you, kids, girls, women at my age listen to her. You are now saying that it is okay to just be a woman who knows how to give good oral sex, because that's what you are and that's what you're known for. And sometimes you may not be pretty enough, but you know how to give good oral sex, and that's just who you are as a woman. I'm listening to this and I'm like, I'm mind blown by this, because I feel like oral sex, it is given to a partner, not for you to enjoy, because I'm sorry, maybe I'm crazy, but I don't think a woman gets any type of feeling when they're giving oral sex to a man or another woman, whatever it is, they're really pleasuring their partner. And I think you have to love somebody because you want them to feel pleasured. And I'm like, wait, there's women out here giving oral sex to random man. I feel like that's something you do for somebody because you know they have pleasure of that, and that's something that you're giving to them that is special. I was like, wait a minute, this is normal?
When it isn't in an intimate, loving relationship,
Right, right.
what does that say to what our society is becoming when it comes to how vulnerable, especially women are, but men are too? Men are getting raped. Men are getting taken advantage of because
Mm-hmm.
we're a society now where there are no boundaries, there are no limits. And I think that's part of what this big issue is with taking victims and survivors seriously.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a negative impact on the survivorship of the lack of consent in
Mm-hmm.
sexual relationships.
It's gone down the hill. Respect for women and respect for men, it's down the drain. It's so upsetting. Sometimes I watch women and I watch how they talk and how they present themselves and how they carry themselves. And I say to myself, man, I'm probably just really old school. Because I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't dress like this. I can't talk like this. I cannot carry myself like this. And I just really hope that women have a little more comprehension of and understanding how a woman's body is supposed to be respected and how it's supposed to be carried. I think we have a job here. Our job is to keep our feminine side, to keep a sexy side, but yet a classy side. We're nurturing, right? That is our job. And that is completely lost. All these women that I talk to, they care about a car, they care about a purse, they care about what you have and what the man doesn't have. And is he going to satisfy me? And how much money does he have? What does he do? And can he take care of me? And he can't. Well, you know what? He might still be a good one night stand. And I'm going to go and I'm going to have sex and I'm going to leave. I hear some of my friends talk and I'm like, for what? That's meaningless sex. Like there's nothing there. Do you not want to feel anything? Everyone is numbing themselves without drugs. That's what I've come down to. Yeah, it's going to take a long time for me to meet somebody because the people out there are not going to like what I have to say. Because even though, as I've been through all this abuse, I still want love. I still want somebody to respect me. I still want somebody to look at me and say, oh my God, I want to take and not take care of me financially. That is far from what I am looking for. I mean, take care of me, comforting me, supporting me. Love wins it all. I know it sounds cheesy, but people have forgotten about that. And people have forgotten also, too, that is so important that I have been bringing so much awareness on my platform. People don't know that they have peace until it's lost. And I always tell people, protect your peace because I didn't have peace for a long time. Once you get abused, your peace starts to get a little mixed up and you start to think that peace is something. And let me tell you, peace is not where somebody comes and says, I want this, I want that, and I'm going to fight you with this. Your peace gets taken away. And then now that I've gotten my peace back and I have nobody trying to start an argument with me or trying to antagonize me or trying to make me mad or trying to victim blame me. Oh, you think that you could get away with that because you had this and you had this going on with you. I'm like, wow, women, men, everybody, protect your peace. It's something that you can't pay for. You can't buy that. And let me tell you, if you have peace, you have health. And if you have peace and health, you have love. And those are three main things that you need in life. And people are forgetting about that until it gets taken away from you. Health is not something you can buy. Peace is not something you can buy. And love is not something you can buy. Those are three things that I stand by today. And I have learned my lesson and I've been through enough. And I definitely don't want none of those things taken away from me. So I hope and I pray that I will find somebody that will love me and respect me and give me comfort because that is all I am looking for. Money, how you look, what can you do for me as in love? What can you do for me to respect me? What can you do to comfort me? What can you do to just hold me and watch a movie? And not everything has to become about sex. Women and men have made everything about sex and money. It is disgusting. And we need to reshape. We need to talk about more about why it has become like that.
Right. And Marina, what you're talking about is something that I would love to make part of another episode. We're already really close to your next appointment. But I can't tell you, this has been amazing. It's so supportive of what this platform is all about because it is so important and it's so genuine and it's talking truth. It's talking about the opposite of shame. And this is what we need is people who recognize their own vulnerabilities, their own victimization, and then use it to help build a world where things are absolutely better. Would you be willing to come back and have another episode with me? Because I think this is on a track that we could go on and on about. I would love that.
Listen, if you know, I've done a podcast for 8 hours, right?
No, I did not know.
Yeah. So it's very dangerous to ask me to come back into something because I absolutely love to speak about things that are going on and bring full awareness. We need to connect with ourselves. It's very important. And I would love to come back and speak about many things. This as well, too. It is very important. And of course, this is the reason why I speak. And, people think, well, because I seen some of the comments when I went, to ABC and I spoke on the platform. Oh, it looks like the little girl went broke. And, I have to remind people, none of the survivors speak on platforms because of money. None of them. None of these survivors are speaking in the Capitol for money. We're not. We're here trying to make a difference for the next generation and the generation now.
Right.
So I really hope people take that in consideration. I can't wait till I come back here and talk more to you. It was really a pleasure and it was such an honor just to speak and to bring awareness and to be a part of this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Marina. It's so humbling to hear you say those things, and I really appreciate that. It's an honor to have you here, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. This is amazing, and I appreciate you more than I can say.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And everybody, protect your peace. Please protect your peace.
That does it for another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. As I close out this conversation with Marina, I want to take a moment to reflect on what her story means, not just in the context of one man's crimes, but in the broader struggle for justice, transparency, and dignity for all survivors of sexual abuse. Marina didn't choose to be thrust into this nightmare. She didn't want to be a witness, a headline, or a symbol. But out of a place of profound pain, she's chosen a purpose, using her voice to demand that the world see what really happened and that no one else's truth is denied or dismissed. Her courage reminds us that survivors are not defined by what was done to them, but by their ability to rise, to speak, and to insist on accountability, and to carve meaning out of trauma. Many of you listening have carried stories you've never told. Some of us know people who have. If today's episode inspires you to sit with that pain, to support someone hurting in silence, or to take one more step towards healing, then Marina's courage has done far more than tell a story. It has sparked a conversation we need to keep having, loud, unflinching, and full of compassion. It's all part of normalizing the conversation about this all too prevalent crime. You can do your part in helping to bring justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault. Start by believing, because we all know someone whose life has been impacted by rape or sexual assault. For all you listening, thank you for being part of the SAS audience, for holding a space for these stories, and for keeping this work moving forward. Thank you for listening with compassion, curiosity, and for staying committed to understanding the real impact of trauma on the lives of survivors. This is why the SAS podcast exists, to normalize the conversation, to educate, and to hold space for those stories so they can lead to justice, understanding, and change. We'll see you next week.